Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
There's a difference between being helpful and being constantly available. You can be helpful and not necessarily be constantly available. I think I see this a lot in church, not particularly at the church that I'm at now, but growing up. Let's just use Sister Imogene. Sister Imogene, she was on the deaconess board. She was on the usher board. She was on the building fund board. And Sister Imogene is just running. She's running from meeting to meeting. She's at the church. If there's 7 days in a week, she's at the church 6 days of the right. And she's on a couple of choirs, and she's leading the ministry team, and she's doing all of these things. But I think part of the issue for Sister Imogene is that idealistically, she thought she was being helpful, but she's really being constantly available for the church. And the church feels like we're going to pull her in whatever direction we can take her. And you can be good at what you do and still not give all of yourself. You still need time for your friends, your family, but more importantly, you need time for you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle. I want to thank you all for tuning in as you do each and every week. Shout out to those of you who are watching on YouTube. Man, check this out. All right, so I had something happen a couple of days ago that led me to this conversation. I have a friend, really good friend. It's one of my boys. And he called me, and I saw his name pop up. I was doing something, so I didn't answer the phone. I could have answered the phone and said, hey, let me call you back. But I didn't. I didn't answer the phone. I just let it go to voicemail, and I kept doing what I was doing. Then, for whatever reason, he called again. And this time, I sent it straight to voicemail because I don't understand why he would be calling back to back. I'll explain that a little bit more in just a second. And then he sends me a text and he says, "Hey, man, I'm trying to get in contact with you. Call me back." Okay. And so I knew it wasn't an emergency, but honestly, I was a little bit offended because he called me back to back, because I don't think, unless it's an emergency, unless it's family, unless it's your kids, your significant other, your spouse, I don't think people should call you back to back just to talk. And I didn't call him back until the next day, right? And when I called him back, he said, "Well, man, I was trying to get in contact with you." And I said, "Well, what was the problem?" And he said, "Well, I had a question and I needed you to answer to settle, I was arguing with a friend and I wanted you to settle the argument." And I said, "Well, you called me back to back as if it was like an emergency. I'm not your girl. So you don't need to call me back to back." And I've never been a fan of calling people back to back. My thing is this: if I call you once and I leave you a message, that's it. I don't need to call you again. And so I just calmly told him, that's not cool. Don't call me back to back and send me a text "Hey, you got to call me back," because you don't know what I'm doing. And again, because it wasn't my wife, it wasn't one of our children, it wasn't my mom, it wasn't my brother, it wasn't my dad. Outside of that, nobody else really gets to call me, multiple times and send text messages. And what it got me to think about was just the access that people have to you. And it led me to think something that I've always felt people have a lot of access to you, but you have to have boundaries for which you give that access to. And I understand that because of who I am and the generation in which I grew up, where we didn't have the technology that we have now, that's totally different now than it was back then. So I grew up all of my childhood, most of my adult life without, cell phones and text messages and emails and things like that, where people can get in contact with you. If you called me in 91 and I wasn't there, I just wasn't there. Yeah, maybe I guess you probably could leave me a voicemail. But no, you didn't have that kind of access to me. And I think personally, we as a society benefited from not having that much access to people and people having that much access to us. Right now, we live in a world where everybody expects immediate access to you. They want access to you immediately through text messages, through phone calls, social media, email, any and everything between. And on this episode, I want to talk about, just the boundaries that you have to have with all of that, because everybody doesn't need access to you, quite honestly. Unless it's family, and then even sometimes family. And I'll touch on a little bit about why, all of that's not necessary. Some people really feel guilty in saying no. Personally, I don't have a problem with saying no. And the reason being is that I think for me, earlier in my life, I was more of a pleaser, I guess, per se. So I was eager to please people. So I would volunteer and, I would say yes to anything. Hey, Kyle, can you do this? Yes. Can you help me do this? Yes. Can you come over here and look at this? Yes. But as I've gotten older and I realize also I'm very protective of my time, protective of my peace. I don't say yes to a lot of stuff. A lot of times people will ask things or suggest things, and first thing that comes out of my mind is no. I mean, and my friends will tell you, well, we don't know if we should ask KD because KD's going to say no. Hey, we're going over here to this party. KD, you want to come? No. Why not? I'm not coming. Why? Because I'm not. I'm not giving you a reason. I don't have to give you a reason. If you ask me, am I coming to the party? And I say no, that's it. I'm not coming. There's nothing you're going to do to convince me to come. And so that's the way I've been. And I'm not a party pooper or anything like that, but I have boundaries. I particularly, most of my day is spent doing the stuff that I have to do. Like I have to go to work. I have to take care of my kids. I have to, spend time with my wife. But outside of the stuff that I have to do, the stuff that I want to do or the stuff that I need to do, that's for me. And I don't allow anybody to step on that time frame or those things, because those things are the things that give me peace. Those are the things that give me comfort. Those are the things that I want to do. And so if I want to spend a Sunday, watching football, that's what I'm going to do. And in doing that, it doesn't make any sense for me to schedule to be on someone else's podcast, because I'm not going to do it. If you ask me to come on your podcast, I would definitely come on your podcast, but it's not going to be on a Sunday, because Sunday is my peace day. That's the day I go to church and then I watch football. And my family will tell you, I literally will get home from church and sit on the couch and watch football the entire rest of the day. Don't move at all. So it's easy for me to say no, but for some people it's hard. And I get that. But the thing I would say in this episode to challenge to you is say no because you need to say no, not necessarily to spare anyone's feelings. Say no because you need to have boundaries. You need to have boundaries of your time and your efforts and your heart and your feelings and any and everything in between. There's always some level of pressure to respond for some. I don't subscribe to that pressure, because pressure don't get to me at all. I may be a little rare in that sense, but I'm not moved by that stuff. So for the people who love me and, help take care of me and are very close to me, they know how I move. I'm not some person who's just going to shoot everything down. That's not me. But at the same time, no, I'm going to do what I want to do, within reason. I know, like, for the example of social media was something that came to all of us. And I've talked on this episode, on this podcast about how, I got into social media. And there was a point in time where I spent a lot of time on social media. Now, not so much. I think I spend a lot more time looking and maybe liking here and liking there. And that's about it. I really don't spend a lot of time conversing with the people that I used to converse with on social media. And it's not because I don't care about them, because I genuinely do. A lot of times I don't see their stuff. Like I can get on Twitter and I might see OJ's post, and that's about it. I don't see Maya's post. I don't see Jermaine's post. I mean, like it's a lot of people's stuff that I just don't see. Every now and then I'll see Danny Foxworth's stuff. But it's just, and I don't spend that much time on it. So the algorithm is saying, hey, let's just throw this at him because he's rarely here. He's showing up only to post his podcast stuff. But you have to protect your time. You have to protect yourself. You have to protect your mental health. And that goes with setting boundaries for friends and family as well. I think there's an overlying thought that people think that because they have your number, that they have access to you. Well, that's not always the case, nor should it be. Because if you allow people to press a button and get to you at any given point, we all know there are some phone calls that you can take from friends and family members that are purposeful. Like that 20 minutes that you spend talking, you get something out of it, they get something out of it, and that's that. And then there are the other conversations where, you're just literally just holding the phone and they're talking and you feel worse after you get off the phone with them than you did before you got on the phone with them. And you can't do that to yourself because it's just not worth it. And it's not worth your time. But friends and family will do that to you. And again, you have to have boundaries. And particularly when you're getting into your relationships, one of the things that I've passed on to my kids is like, be careful about what you say about your relationship, because here's the thing. If you tell me, if my son tells me that his girlfriend slapped him, he may forgive her and move on and they keep going in their relationship. And me, in the back of my mind, you hit my child. You know what I mean? Like, I feel a way about that. And because I have taught my kids not to hit people and definitely not to hit women, I'm going to feel a way because I feel like maybe you took advantage of the fact that he's not going to hit you and you hit him, and that ain't cool. And we got a problem. But I got the problem with you now but he's moved on and y'all are still together. So, you have to be mindful about the things that you relay in a relationship to friends and family, but that's a boundary, and everything isn't meant for everybody. Some things you got to keep in house. Some things you got to keep to yourself. Some things you got to keep within the unit of your family. Everything is not meant for public consumption. It just isn't, because once you involve the public, now you're getting pulled in different directions, and that's never good. But again, boundaries. You got to set boundaries. Establishing a work-life balance, very paramount for your mental health. The thing that I will say is, and I try to make sure that I do this myself, don't let your job make you go crazy. Because at the end of the day, if knock wood, if you were to drop dead tomorrow, they'd fill that seat 2 days from now. They'd fill the seat. They would fill your seat before your homegoing service. It just is what it is. And we're no longer in the era of, working for a company for 30 years and retiring there. That's probably not going to happen. Nowadays, if you're at a job for 10 years, that's a lot. I mean, think about it. For all of you, how many of you have been at your job for 10 years or more? Probably not a lot. There's some, but the days of working at the GE plant and, for 30 years and then retiring and riding off into the sunset, it's probably not going to happen for most of us. And so you make sure that your work-life balance is to where you don't feel like when that time comes for you to step away from that company or that company chooses to step away from you, you don't feel like you wasted a bunch of time in a company that you thought was going to be forever, and it's not. Because if you don't own the company, you're expendable. Period. Point blank. But more importantly, when you think about your peace is more valuable than your popularity. I know a lot of people want to be popular. And I mean, when you were in high school, who didn't want to be popular? When you were in college, you wanted to be popular. Who didn't? I mean, who didn't want to be the big man on campus or the big woman on campus? But your peace is way more valuable than the popularity that you have. And honestly, if you're supremely popular, you're probably going to have some issues with the peace. How can I say this? That can happen. It doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen if you allow it. If your focus is on your popularity. But you got to protect your peace at all times. You can't allow people to invade the area by which you have comfort. And it's important and very healthy to set boundaries. If you don't, you're going to be that hamster on the wheel, and you're going to be running, and you're going to be consistently running, and you're going to be tired and frustrated because you did not set the boundaries for the people around you. And one of the things that I always talk about is there's a difference between being helpful and being constantly available. You can be helpful and not necessarily be constantly available. I think I see this a lot in church. Not particularly at the church that I'm at now, but growing up. Let's just use Sister Imogene. Sister Imogene, she was on the deaconess board. She was on the usher board. She was on the building fund board. And Sister Imogene is just running. She's running from meeting to meeting. She's at the church. If there's 7 days in a week, she's at the church 6 days of the week. Right. And she's on a couple of choirs, and she's leading the ministry team, and she's doing all of these things. But I think part of the issue for Sister Imogene is that idealistically, she thought she was being helpful, but she's really being constantly available for the church. And the church feels like we're going to pull her in whatever direction we can take her because she's good at what she does. And you can be good at what you do and still not give all of yourself, because you still need time for you. You still need time for your friends, your family, but more importantly, you need time for you. And again, you can't give everybody access to you. Make sure that your access comes on a limited basis, or the basis by which you want to define. And, a couple of things that I'll end this with. One, every invitation doesn't require your attendance. Just because you're invited to a party, that don't mean you got to go to the party. And I know that may sound strange for some, but maybe it's just not in the cards for you to go. Maybe you need to stay at home and take a nap. Or maybe you need to work on that project that you were talking about fixing in the house. Or maybe you just needed time just to chill because, your 9 to 5 had you ripping and running all week. And because Stacy invited you to her party, now you're going to her party. But maybe you needed to just stay at home. And there's no knock on Stacy, but just because you're invited doesn't mean that you need to attend. People need to see that. Number two, peace is expensive. Protect it. I couldn't be any clearer. Your peace is expensive. You must protect it. Because if you don't protect your peace, you will allow people who don't even deserve your peace to take it away from you. And that's not fair to you. And then sometimes they can take your peace or adversely affect your peace and you not even know it. And that's the worst part. Number three, boundaries don't push people away. They reveal to you who respects you and your time. That's why boundaries are important. Because you set a boundary doesn't mean that you're going to push somebody away. Because the reality is, if you push them away, they weren't there to begin with for you. Honestly, they weren't trying to be there for you. They were just in the way. And last but not least, you literally and figuratively teach people how to treat you by what you do. And so if you allow people to have access to you, all kinds of access to you, then they'll treat you any kind of way because you're always available. And they know that they can do anything to you, and they know they can say anything to you. And they know no matter how good or how bad or indifferent it is, that you'll take it. And you got to love you before you allow anybody else to love you. And if you love yourself, you'll make sure that you set boundaries, you protect your peace, and that you don't allow people to just handle you any old kind of way. Because if you do, ultimately, they will. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We drop new episodes every Thursday. Now, what's very important is you need to subscribe to the newsletter. Go to the website, the12kylepodcast.riverside.com, and subscribe to the newsletter. Once you subscribe to the newsletter, there you will get updates anytime we drop a new episode. We're not going to spam your email. It'll only be about the show stuff and some exclusive stuff as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000. Cheers.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.